All right, we are live, and I can't believe it. It is a day that I never actually thought was going to happen. It never actually was in the thought process that I had really 6 months ago, and we're going to dive into that. So thank you all for tuning in. I'm really excited to share some of the adventures we've had over the last 360 days, and I'm going to tell you why that's the number in a minute with some of these crazy crew and people who've been really instrumental in going from kind of just doing the Mentor Minute here on a Sunday to launching X Factor Publishing. It's part of Codebreaker team and all this great things. 2 books back here didn't exist a year ago, and I really want to share definitely the 2 people that started this journey with me, and I'm going to bring them on right now. I'm going to welcome in Brian Aspinall and Daphne Mcmenamin. So happy you 2 are here, and what a crazy day. Brian, where are you, first of all?
I'm at home. What do you mean?
Nice. What? I like it.
You know, I live so minimalist, I don't even have ceilings.
Okay, well, hope it doesn't rain there.
I have a roof.
Okay, fair enough. And Daphne, where are you calling in from?
From my home office in Ontario, Canada. Oakville, Ontario, Canada. I am 3.5 hours away from Brian
Awesome.
On a Sunday afternoon.
Crazy. That is awesome. Well, thanks for being here and part of this exciting event. And you 2 are instrumental to making this happen. And this morning I texted actually Brian because I was looking back to see when our actual kind of connection started. And it was December 17th, not even 1 year ago today. I received a text or a DM on Twitter from Brian. It was like, thanks for highlighting some of our people on your podcast. And I was like, we had a little chat back and forth. And he said, hey, do you want to jump on a video call the next day? And I was like, sure, cool. Just to get to meet and kind of chat back and forth. And 24 hours later was part of the Codebreaker team and started to write a book. And is that how that works, Brian? Is this just how you go out and just like,
you know what?
What's the story here?
It's exactly how it works.
It's a gut feeling, you know. It's an instinct. It hasn't really led me astray yet.
Okay, awesome. And so, Daphne, you are the managing editor. I think your title is amongst many titles of Codebreaker. Tell us your role in the team.
So I like to call myself Brian 2.0.
Okay.
Like that title. No, that's not at all what I call myself. Do you know what, Matt? It's funny that you say your journey started that way with Brian and Codebreaker, because that's exactly how mine started. It was through a DM, and here we are 2 years later on mine, 2.5 years over here. But I am the editor at Codebreaker, as well as sort of everything. Like I edit the books, I build the books, we deal with our authors together, we work on our website and all of our marketing things. Brian and I consult together, and as Christine reminded me, yes, I'm the advisor. That's the newest title I have on my increasing business card. Brian still won't add that to our budget to get me an 8.5 by 14 business card, but yeah, I sort of do a little bit of everything at Codebreaker.
And an author, like, let's not forget that, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, including an author, and I teach full time. So yeah, it's been much like yourself. It's been an absolutely wild ride, a place I never thought I'd see myself. But beyond that, it's not a place I even knew existed 2 years ago. So I like yourself, I'm very grateful for Brian.
Awesome. And we got a couple people already chiming in. We got Mel from South America. What's going on, Mel? We got Shell from up north. That is awesome. So thanks for tuning in. It is great to see you. And I told Brian this morning, I had a funny Brian story before we even met. And then I want to dive into a couple of your things before we bring in our next guest. My actual first kind of interaction with Brian, and I had seen him kind of obviously doing some great work. I actually had a chance to see him in Florida. He didn't see me. I waved. He had his hat on. He was locked into the elevator. He had like his bags behind him, his Canadian hat. And it was like in that time where I was pre-Power Connections, I was just taking pictures with everybody. And he walked right by to the elevator. I was like, oh, damn, I was going to take a picture with him, but he already went by me. But then the actual time, the first time we had an interaction was I was actually promoting the session I was doing, moving from consumption to creation. And I sent out this tweet. He probably doesn't remember because he has like 80,000 people he communicates with every day, besides running a YouTube show and building a tiny house. And I just wrote, I did a tweet that said, "Apps don't teach, teachers teach. Come to this session and see."
I remember. I gave you some pushback on that one.
Absolutely, it was my first encounter, and I thought it was the most respectful thing because he didn't do it online. Now, if he tweeted that out, he could have like buried me with kind of his followers. He sent me like a DM, like, "Hey, dude," and went into like this real depth of explanation. I was like, I appreciate that, and I took that feedback, and I knew he just was a good dude at that point. Like, so what made you do that? Just to pick on me? Like, what was that all about?
It had nothing to do with you. It's the misinformation and miscommunication around all things coding and computer science that I'm trying to raise awareness about. Particularly today, we're at the end of Computer Science Education Week, but most people know it as Hour of Code. And there's a heck of a lot more to computer science than just coding. So it's my passion project to correct the wrongs and raise more awareness about all things physical computing, as right as writing software, because that software has to run on hardware as well.
So I knew at that point, like, wow, this is a good dude, because he could have buried me. He chatted with me, and I was really respectful. So when he had asked to come on board, I was like, heck yeah, this would be great. I trusted his vision. And then this summer, another crazy idea you decided to just send me: start this publishing company. Now, what made you start to decide to like branch off a little bit?
Well, I think you and I share some very similar paths. It hasn't always been easy, as many of us know. The more innovative we try to be in education, the more pushback we often get, and the bigger the target on our back tends to be. I decided to leave my former district on my own terms when I just had finally had enough of the crap, if you will. I'm not suggesting all school districts deal with a bunch of crap, but in many ways they all do. You know what I'm talking about. So just being able to find the like-minded folks on this planet that really truly believe in education and really truly want to do what's best for kids. It's not just a paycheck. Trusting those gut feelings and trying to amplify voices and scale our message by bringing folks like you on board is just invaluable to this process of ultimately forming our own virtual academy of learning across the globe to actually share best practice. I'm not even going to say best practice, because that implies there's no room for improvement, but breaking the silo of my province, my school, even my country by, meeting folks like you just allows us to all be better people.
Awesome. And then just before, I'm going to dive into Daphne as the advisor as well to X Factor, which is invaluable. We have a couple of our team members who are already in the room, in the green room, and they're going to be coming up soon. I see you down there. We're going to bring you up soon. So Daphne, when Brian reached out with this crazy idea, did you know that you'd be getting frantic random text in the fall from this guy? Like, can you look at this cover? What about this ink? What do we... Were you good with that? Like, you okay with that?
Yes, I did know that was going to happen.
Okay.
No, do you know what? I was really excited, Matt, because, you and I worked together to edit Power of Connections, and I knew, so I knew you that way, and I knew you as this person who was not only very receptive to feedback, but very grateful for it. So that was a really positive experience that you and I had together. And, Brian, as Brian said earlier, he trusts his gut. And as a result, I trust Brian. So I knew immediately that this was going to be a really sort of seamless partnership to move from, editor and author to just sort of co-publishers to a degree. I don't know what we call that. And I knew right away that it was going to be a really positive, sort of exciting thing moving forward. And I love that I've already made enough mistakes that I can save you the time and the energy and all of the
I can't
anger and frustration that comes along with it. So I love being able to be that person for you.
Awesome. And now speaking of editing, and I'm going to call in the editor of new books. The two of you probably have some stories for sure, but I'd always respect when Daphne would put some pretty harsh feedback into the Power of Connection, which I appreciated. Listen to me. I always feel a little like it was direct, just like Brian was direct on his DM to me. But I always knew when one was coming because I'd get a phone call. Like, hey, Matt, I'm like, everything okay? She's like, yeah, when you open up your document, so it was great.
Sorry in advance.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, and I appreciate all that you've done. And I know, Brian, the Codebreaker and everything has been a passion project, which has been your most recent book. As I welcome in Christine, can you kind of talk us through a little bit of passion project?
Yeah, that is basically the culmination of the last 2 decades of my life. I've always written through a technical lens, and I recognize that those books don't often have a long shelf life. Well, with the exception of Codebreaker, my first book is 4 years old, and it's still popular as a result of what's happening in industry in the world. But we live and breathe in a system in which failure is punished, and yet we continue to preach this narrative of taking risks and embracing failure, and it's very, very contradictory. So I wanted to write sort of my innovative lens of what I've done with education, but also on the outside of education. I want to inspire kids that come from a small town. I grew up in a town of 3,000 people. I've since moved back to this community, and to show them that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can have a positive impact on this place if you put your mind to it. So when Passion Meets Project was essentially 20 years in the making, and coincidentally took 20 days exactly from the day I opened a blank Google Doc to the day it came to life to be published, which we're really, really proud of. It was just sort of flowing out of me. It's a story of my own journey. It's a story of some hard truths with unions and school districts and politics and all of those other pieces. I mean, at the end of the day, we all preach doing what's best for kids until ... sometimes ego gets in the way of that, my own included. And so there's some reflecting on that too in the book. But I was inspired to talk about passion projects and risk taking and all those pieces because that is my life. I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you today if it wasn't that mindset. And there's a lot of shifting that we have to do in education. We've spent the last, 10, 20, 30 years revamping how we instruct our lessons, but we've done jack on the assessment and evaluation side. So it's time to ditch those grades and focus on other things.
That's awesome. So, well, I'm glad you took a risk in your passion project to expand Codebreaker. Fortunate about that. I don't know if my next guest might share that sentiment, because when I asked her to edit, maybe she should have called Daphne to say, what am I getting into? So, Christine, welcome. Besides being a best-selling author for Codebreaker, came into X Factor as an editor. Talk about that crazy experience.
So first of all, you're going to hear my kids screaming in the background. I promise they're safe. So when you came to me and you were like, hey, I'm starting this publishing business, I thought that was phenomenal. And I was psyched for you. And I thought it was sort of the most logical path for you. But then when you were like, hey, you want to edit my book? I was like, you want this to be successful, right? And I've had some experience with your writing because prior to this, we would share articles and you'd ask me to look them over. And that sometimes a couple page article would take a little longer than I thought. So when you explained to me that it was, a book that you were kind of like revamping, I was like, okay, I think I can handle this because it's, there's been some other eyes on it. And then I realized it was going to take me a lot longer than I thought.
That's a nice way to say.
Yeah, to put it nicely. So, it's such a different, and I'm sure Daphne can speak to this. It's such a different experience to like be an author and then be an editor. Because I struggled with like keeping the author's voice, but like also kind of like helping and putting my spin on it. So I really appreciated the challenge of it. And I like diving into someone else's work for a bit. You know, you kind of, I think I needed a break from myself. So it was like the perfect way to like still stick with it. But to, you know, not necessarily be writing on my own. So I thought you were crazy. I'm glad that you asked me now. It's awesome just to, you know, even have a little role in the first book that you've released. And yeah, I got to add editor to my business card, which is
We got advisor,
kind of a messed up
editor.
thing. Yeah, like if you ever asked me if I was going to be an author someday, I'd be like, well, none of my English teachers in school ever would have selected me as the most likely to become a published author, and now I'm an editor. Like, it's just craziness. Talk about risks, like Brian did. It's weird how things kind of just fall into place and happen when you stick with it.
Well, I'm certainly glad you did, and the final product speaks to your work and your efforts. And speaking of taking risks, I'm going to bring in some of the rest of our team who essentially dove in with blind faith, with me saying, "Hey, I'm going to do this thing, and you want to come on board." And a few people decided to take that, and I want to say more than a few people. We have 14 amazing team members who are going to support you and educators. So I'm going to bring them on and kind of introduce you to them, have them talk a little bit about our project from where they are. So I'm going to let Jed go first, more because he's in a car, and if he goes under a bridge or who knows, I think Melissa is too.
Outside of a rink.
Okay, I don't see her yet though. Oh, there she is. So Jed actually is our most recent addition to the X Factor team, and came on to the Innovators Lounge this season and really showed that his vision and ideas fit in what we are doing. So, Jed, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and talk a little about your project.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I hope my connection's strong enough. And Brian talking about lenses, that's what my whole project is about. And it's definitely a passion project. And Christine, if there was no screaming in your background, if there's screaming in my background, that means we've driven off the road.
Well, let's hope not.
I'm just a passenger. Yeah, Matt, thanks. Congratulations, by the way, on the launch, the book, the whole thing, putting this together. And I'm thrilled to be part of it. And honestly, my project came about, right? I joined into the Innovators Lounge and took the really daunting step of trying to preach to the choir about computational thinking. And my angle on it was, this whole project began as thinking about computational thinking as the 5th C, right? And I realized, well, I didn't realize, Brian was kind enough to tell me in Canada, they're up to 6 or more Cs. But still, those computational thinking usually isn't added in that graphic wherever. So kind of my angle with workshops had been considering computational thinking as a critical classroom competency, right up there with communication, collaboration, everything. And then that grew because the more I thought about it, it was really rethinking all of the way that we're teaching and learning, and just kind of, what did I write down? Rethinking the way things have always been done to redesign what kids are now doing in order to reshape the way that they're learning in classrooms. So thinking about that, it grew, partially because Brian's written the book literally on coding computational thinking, and it doesn't need to be rewritten. So expanding that further into some of the blogging that I had been doing, and really digging deeper into digital learning in general. So my role, I'm a digital learning coach. I was a 3rd grade teacher for 20 years. This is my 5th year as a digital learning coach. So my project is called Take AIM, and the AIM stands for Activate, Innovate, and Motivate Digital Learning. So it's activating content, innovating instructional practice, and motivating learners. And it's really just that. And it's the idea of looking at different lenses to rethink the way that things have always been done, and thinking about digital learning as more than just teaching tech, and not quite as simple as just teaching with tech. So super exciting.
No, and I think when Jed came on board and then the process showed the real tight partnership between Codebreaker and X Factor. He came on and I asked, he participated in the Innovators Lounge, and then I asked him to present, almost like hey, this is like your tryout. Like, let's see what you got. I'm going to put you in front of some real professionals who've done this, like Brian and Daphne and other people. And when I started to talk about Jed, about the X Factor publishing, it was almost like the respect of like, let me reach out to Brian and see if this was okay. It wasn't there a connection with the two of you before this happened?
Yeah, there was, and I didn't want it to be this like, under the radar communication. I just wanted to learn more about the connection, so that somehow these weren't, competing things, and there was this miscommunication. So I just kind of wanted to learn more, like, what's the connection? What's the background? How is X Factor connected? And how does it land with you? And Brian was just, let's go, with a lot of O's and a lot of thumbs up and a lot of B's. So kind of with that endorsement, I was super encouraged and was like, all right, Matt, I'm in.
Awesome. So Brian, and I'm going to ask you a question, but it just shows the respect that I've had and the way you lead from the middle. You pull people, you push people, and you try to amplify others' voices. So when Jed reached out to you, we're just like, come on, man, we're good.
What makes Codebreaker different than some of the other publishers on the scene is we don't just publish people with large followings. That's not our MO. We want to publish people with stories that need to be told so that we can actually move the needle. I'm sick and tired of the cheerleading that happens, across social media spaces. And so I have no doubt that Jed will make massive, massive impact. And it's right up my alley. I'm passionate about that too.
Awesome. So it looks like Melissa's in transit, so I'm going to catch her too. I'm going to actually have Melissa and Sandra talk because they are the first official signees of X Factor. They were a big part of the Innovators Lounge Season 1, and we miss you. We hope you can come back. But in hearing some of their stories, I knew I needed to reach out to them and jump on board. So I'd love for you two to introduce yourself, and I know Christine's going to be a part of your project as well.
Absolutely. And I'm not red carpet ready like Sandra is.
She's always
all of the time. Me, I'm just coming out of the rink, but off a good win. So it's all good.
Awesome. So both you and Christine in some capacity had some hockey today. So that's good.
Nice.
So tell us who you are, kind of what your project is with Sandra. It'd be great.
Sandra, you going to go or me?
You go.
All right. I'm Melissa Dabo. I'm from Ontario, Canada. Connection with Daphne. We work in the same district, and I just adore her and follow all the awesomeness that she brings to the world. And through her was connected with Brian, and then Brian connected with Matt, and then it's just like one big happy family. And my partner in crime, Sandra Donahue, is just my ultimate mentor and idol and cheerleader. And we are coming together to bring all of our awesome ideas and our authenticity to leadership to the masses.
Yes.
You got to have more than yes. You dance on Fridays. You do all this stuff. Like, you got to have more than yes. Tell us who you are, where you come from, and your idea of what the two of you are going to dive into.
Okay, Sandra Donahue here, coming from Ontario as well. Blessed and privileged to share a connection to the Canadian border, and also super inspired by both Daphne and Brian in, just breaking down, the barriers and just letting everybody know that we can do better, that we can be better, that there's more out there, there's more to offer. And somehow I found my spirit partner in Melissa, even though we have never worked in the same family of schools. We have never worked in the same building. It's amazing, but we managed to find each other. And we're just both incredibly enthusiastic about, just leading with passion and inspiring everybody and making a difference each and every day. Just being right out there front and center. I know the past 2 years leading through a pandemic has been really interesting, but we've tried to just continue to stay engaged, continue to elevate each other, to continue to celebrate every single opportunity that we can. We constantly push each other to do more, and we're continuously collaborating. Somehow we landed in this Innovators Lounge where we found you, Matthew, and then you reached out to us, and we were like, what? And the funny thing is that I always used to tell Melissa, oh, come on, girl, we're going to write a book one day. And she'd always be like, what are you talking about? And then somehow it just, I don't know, we manifested it. And here we are. And then we made this amazing link with Christine, and it's just going to be an incredible journey. We're working in the background, trying to get our book together, but we have so many ideas and so many things to share, and just really super excited about this passion project, super excited to be connected to incredible educators. Our world just keeps expanding. We're knocking down borders all the time, and it's amazing and incredible. So yeah, that's what our goals are, to just, you know, continue to innovate, elevate, celebrate, and learn from and with this fabulous group of people.
Awesome. So Christine, I know we kind of started talking about editing, and next thing you know, you're editing my book, you're collaborating with Melissa and Sandra, and now you have Carl Hooker's book in your queue to go at. Was this something you were like, what am I getting myself into?
I don't know. I'm a very like in the moment person. I think a lot of people who know me well know that about me. So I don't think that I kind of like thought down the road, but I will say that I like it. Like I'm way better given what I struggle with when I'm busy. And so just to see other people accomplish and realize their goals and their dreams is like, just to be a part of that is, I mean, how can that not inspire you, right? Like, how can that not make you want more of that, to continue to work hard? So I guess the short answer is like, no, I wasn't expecting this, but I wasn't really expecting anything. You know, you'd reached out to me and said, hey, you want to edit Sandra and Melissa's book? And I was like, sure. Like, I take that as a compliment. You think highly enough of me to bring me on board to do that. And then you were like, whoa, I got this other idea. I'm going to revamp my own book. And I was like, whoa, what about that book? Like, so yeah, no, I'm just a live in the moment person. I'm so grateful. It's been crazy.
And just another example of the partnership and the collaboration with Codebreaker and Brian, especially. Let's just be honest, that wasn't my idea. It was Brian, like, hey, dude, you know, it'd be wicked. Like, why don't you launch the first book? This was like in July. I'm like, I just, you know, Melissa and Sandra signed. He's like, no, you go first. And I'm going to say no. Brian knows what he's doing. He knows what's up. So was able to do that. And then another, is Nathan going to make an appearance? Tell him you should just come over.
Oh no, he did appear, but you were talking to
we missed
else.
it. Oh, bummer.
I tried very hard to get him to like keep quiet. Clearly I was unsuccessful.
So then just another kind of example of how we work together is Brian and I talk a lot about who even to bring on. Like, I'm not going to bring somebody on without kind of chatting with him. And Melissa and Sandra, you were someone real early on that he was like, these two are rock stars, and talk a little bit more with them. And so that really just shows and how that real connection and partnership. But I'm going to put you on the spot one more time, Christine, and maybe Brian and Daphne. You're doing all this editing. Your book just jumped up to number 3 on the bestseller list on Amazon.ca. You going to do some more writing too?
Yeah. So I'm hoping that the next book that I work on editing will be a faster process for me.
Nice way to say that. Good. I appreciate it.
And yeah, so I actually last week sort of started writing on my own again. I don't really have kind of a clear-cut vision, but I work better when I just start and then it kind of develops into something. And, you know, I tell people it's like running. The hardest part is putting on your sneakers, and then you just go and you were like, wow, look what I accomplished. So for me, it's just starting. And so I just started last week. It felt awesome. Yeah. So I guess it's in the works, I guess. Like, we got to see kind of where it goes.
Awesome. Now, speaking of in the works, well, I saw Carl pop on. When he comes back up, there he is. I'm going to add him to the stream. What's in the works is Carl Hooker's next book. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. There
you at
he
a
is.
hotel
Yeah.
pool? Hotel pool, or where are you?
No, I'm not. I'm in front of an Ulta. You know, the beauty salon.
I don't.
And
I
you're-
just. You've just been on
We're
like
out-
17 stages in the last 2
Don't
weeks.
ask.
You just don't get off the stage.
No.
You jealous?
No, I'm not shopping.
Kind of.
It's my wife is actually out of town for like a rare moment, so I was like, I grabbed the girls and we're actually out shopping right now. So I just left them in an Ulta with my credit card for the next 20 minutes. So we'll see what happens.
Well, that's
No.
you got to sell some books. So
Sorry,
let's
thank you
talk
for-
about this.
I know. Thank you all for letting me jump in real quick and people, everyone walking by. Yes, I'm doing a book sale. Okay, so yeah, I've been working on this book for Matt, when did we start? I think August when we started the initial conversation. I got real excited and kind of bragged in mid-September to a bunch of people that I was halfway through it, and then guess what happened? It slowed
Life.
down, because those of you that have written books know it's a process and things get in the way and your creative energies get diverted into different things. And so I'm actually very grateful that it did, because it allowed me to kind of step back and reassess where I was going and what direction I wanted it to go. So the book is called Ready, Set, Fail, and it's all about unlocking creativity through the use of risk-taking and failure in the classroom. And it's meant to be for teachers or also professional development coaches, people like that are doing PD, professional learning in their schools. And there are little mini activities, but also just like questioning things that you can do naturally in any subject area to just kind of get kids to think differently. So got a lot of different strategies in there, some really funny stories of failure. I've got plenty to choose from, so there was no problem with that. I feel bad for Christine, who's got to edit all the stories that I've got in there. Probably too many, but really
I
excited.
just finished
really excited
Matt's
about the
book.
coming
Don't
out, and we
feel
got
bad
the-
about it.
Okay, good.
No,
I feel better then. Yeah. So yeah,
No,
excited
and-
about it, and hopefully they'll get out here in the next month, probably in January.
and I think what's been good, and I've had a chance to see it. You've been kind of test running this content at some events, as Brian said. We haven't seen you anywhere but on the stage. And how's that been for
Me?
people?
I've not been
Yeah.
on stage anywhere.
Then that
No,
must
I've been
be
on
your
stage a lot
doppelganger.
the last couple of weeks, but yeah.
But you've been
That's
sharing
better.
some of that content. How people been receptive to it?
It's been really good. In fact, a lot of the last few sessions I've done have been focused around, to be honest, again, I've written the book based on hundreds and hundreds of workshops and sessions that I've done in classrooms and also with teachers and at conferences. So there was already a plenty of material there, but I kind of synthesized it, put it all together into one piece. But yeah, getting up on stage and talking about it and talking through it, there's been a lot of people saying, yeah, this makes sense. This is what we need, more of this kind of ideologies in our classroom. So I'm really kind of trying to, like a lot of people in Codebreaker, like Brian, like you, Matt, and we're trying to break things down and kind of to the core of education and really make it something useful for teachers. So I'm excited about it. I hope it gets well received, because like I said, it's now been 10 minutes. They've been in there with a credit card. I don't know what's happening at this point.
For sure. And
Kind
one
of
of the things-
nervous.
one of the things that you said there was really important to both Codebreaker, but especially for the people that I have been trying to bring on. As you said, I started writing, you were bragging about how you were halfway done, and then life gets in the way. One of the things that I really want to ensure is that our people are doing the work. They're not just studying it. They're not just theorizing about it. They're actually doing the work. And when I had a chance to come down to Texas and kind of do some work, you and I hung out. I got to meet some people who were doing the work as well. And Melissa Adams was one of those people doing district.
Oh, I see her.
About professional development. There she is. So we had a chance to meet at Idle Hands, which is your bar in Austin, and you opened a new one in Houston. So check it out. Shout out to Idle Hands, which is also in the introduction of Power Connections, by the way. Shameless plug. So Melissa, I want to welcome you on. I want to tell us who you are and your project, and your co-author couldn't make it, but kind of talk about what the two of you are doing.
Yeah, so I'm Melissa Adams, and we are my other person, Jennifer Crook. She is not here today. I'm texting her. I was like, you could jump on, but she just told me she and her husband just left Sam's. They bought some kind of pool mat or like ocean mat that she said it's up on top of the Jeep, and she's having to sit in with the top off of the Jeep and hold it in. And I'm like, well, that would be perfect. That would be perfect for you to jump in and show everyone that's Jennifer. Everything she does is a destination. And so our book is about Destination PD, and Destination PD is just kind of what it sounds like. It's a professional development that takes you on a destination. Both of us started out teaching third grade, and that's where we met. And then now we're both at the administration level. She's an assistant soup of curriculum, and I'm director of instructional technology. So when we were in the classroom, we'd go to these professional developments, and these people are standing there as we're all sitting there, and they're saying, you should be doing this in the classroom and making these experiences and all these fun things. And I'm sitting here going, this is not fun. And you're telling me to do something, and we're not doing what you're preaching to do, these fun things, and we're just sitting here. So we know that students learn through experience and making those connections, and with all their things. And as a teacher, I was like, why are you telling me to do it and not showing me how to do it? And Jennifer moved on up, and she was assistant principal, and then now she's in the curriculum and assistant soup of curriculum. And so that's her belief too. And so she started wanting to have all these professional developments where it's teaching the teachers how to teach those fun and engaging things in the classroom, so that we can reach all kids. All kids learn differently, and we want to be able to showcase that all kids are learning differently, and teachers should teach differently and outside of the box, and not that same, rote. And what Brian was saying earlier, like our next goal is like, how do we assess them differently? Just doing the fun things like that. So and so we started taking Destination PD. We started having we did a Waco town, since we're here in Waco, Texas. It's kind of getting a little bit famous, and we have teachers going around doing different things and learning different things. And I jumped in and helped her to add in some instructional tech and just make it even stronger. So that's kind of what we're all about.
No, and it was great. A great photo this week was Brian. And what school were you at this week? Where were you?
I was in beautiful rural Osage, Iowa, population 4,200, 3 schools in the district. But they are the leaders in computer science education in the K-12 space for the entire state of Iowa. So seems like small footprint, but man, are they making a very big impact.
And one of the things, because I was following your journey there, I saw a great picture with you actually on your knees at eye level with the student. And the student had like something on his arms. It was just real powerful to see this is what education looks like. And when I met Melissa and Jennifer and heard some of the things that they're doing with professional development, it's going to be the book's going to be very similar to that, as talking about. And then we got kind of throwing crazy ideas out. We could go up, we could go up to Maine and do professional development around Stephen King, or in Boston, like making this destination professional development that it doesn't just have to be a sit and get. And what was one of the more recent ones you've done, Melissa? I saw some crazy pictures online. I've seen some things where Carl was in your district.
Yeah, so we did a Jaws Fest. So our entire professional development was centered around the theme of Jaws. And so we had we had Carl Hooker. He was our speaker. He was actually in a shark cage. That was a great one.
Yes, he was.
And teachers moved around to the different stations and were able to choose but we had everything was Jennifer comes up with these crazy ideas, and then she's mapping it out, and then she's like, okay, now Melissa, figure out what are we gonna teach them? And I'm like, oh, okay. So we have these. So she has this great imagination, and since we've known each other for so long, I can just say, okay, I know what she's thinking, I know what direction she's going, so let me make that happen for her. So we had Carl was in the shark cage. He came and he's like, I'm in the shark cage. All right, okay.
So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see some of those ideas play out.
I saw Carl in a shark cage on his OnlyFans account, but that's something different.
That's a whole different story.
Whole different one.
And also, I threw out today, I'm going to throw it down the bottom, and then I want to talk about your sweatshirt, Brian, because of all the great things that you've done for me up north for our Canadian fans. Stronger Together, the new book that we were just talking about. We did a little 25% sale today. The link down low will take you right to Amazon Canada. Grab one of those. To my thanks back to you. And so I say that because Brian has a Gracie shirt on. And one of the things I've been kind of peppering Daphne with lately. So the book's out. She must have been like, yes, thank goodness I don't have. Christine's like, thank goodness I don't have to edit. Daphne's like, thank goodness I don't have to get any more crazy things about covers or drop cases and all this. And then, I don't know, a day later, like, hey, tell me about kids' books. And because not only do you all have one, many of them, you've written one, because one of the books that is coming out from X Factor is one. We have a kids book from Yuritsa, who's going to talk about culturally responsive. It's called Mackenzie's Time Machine, where it's her daughter goes back through time and learn about her ancestors and historical figures of her life. And it's like a mom telling a daughter about historical figures from the past, and like Martin Luther King, and just many Rosa Parks and many different ones.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So that she and I were connected through Mental Roundtable, Walking Ed, and I approached her to write a book, and she's like, well, I'd like to write this book. And at that time I was like, oh, kids book, I don't know anything. I didn't even have contracts at this point. But at the same point, as Brian said earlier, we believe in people, and I knew she was someone who was incredibly impactful. So I then was like, all right, thanks, Daphne, for all the advising you did. How about this now? So Daphne, tell us a little about kids book as we entered it, and feel free to share. I'd love to hear your process in that as I kind of take this selfish time to learn as well.
The first kids book I wrote was Gracie. And that was as a result of a DM through Brian. Hey, have you ever considered writing a children's book? The answer was yes, but I just didn't know where to start. And the best advice I ever got was 3 words that literally changed my life. And Brian said, you just start. And that's what that.
Yeah. Don't you have it somewhere back
right?
there?
Yeah, it's there. But yeah, so that's what I did. I just started. And I think when you write a kid's book, there's, for me personally, and I found this, so I've written 2 on my own and 1 with Brian, which was like, mind blowing. But I think it's very similar to writing sort of a leadership book. As Carl was saying, like you sort of know where you want to go with it. You know how you want to start, you know, sort of the content, but there's that really important piece in the middle that somehow doesn't come to you right away, because you know how you want it to start, you know where you want it to go, but how we're going to get there is a whole different ball game. And you need to, because your audience is very specific in terms of age, it needs to be written just so, or it's going to totally miss the mark. And you need to figure out what your mark is. So when I wrote Gracie, I knew I wanted it to be about a little girl. I knew I wanted it to be about robotics, the robotics side of coding. And that was just simply my own research. There was a lot of kids' books out at the time about coding. It was sort of a trendy thing, but there was nothing really that I'd seen out there that I loved that added sort of that robotic piece in there. Ed tech is one of my biggest passions. So that helped as well. And then I'm a teacher. So it was sort of easy to live in the classroom and bring those experiences to life on paper. One of my favorite parts about kids' books is you write your manuscript, or as an editor, you read the manuscript, but then all of a sudden, when you get those illustrations from somebody else, it adds a whole new layer to your story. It retells your story in a completely different way because somebody else saw your story and they brought it to life through pictures. So my illustrator is Alexandra Massey, and I connected with her through Brian, and she is a brilliant arts university student here in Canada. And I think her connection to Brian is that she was a student at his sister-in-law's school. Is that right, Brian? I think that's how.
Yeah, shameless plug. My shameless plug. My sister was one of 15 to win the Canadian Prime Minister's Award for teaching this year, and Alex was in her grade 12 advanced math class in Windsor, Ontario.
That's right.
Now she's on full ride scholarship in Halifax. So watch out, world. This kiddo's coming. Yeah. She's in her 20s now.
So giving Alex the story and then having her bring it back to me gave Gracie an entirely new life. Like I knew sort of in my head what I wanted it to be, but I didn't have that clear image. And she brought this character to life, and she made Gracie who she is. So it's a really, really writing a kid's book and bringing, editing and building kids books are my favorite thing to do. I love editing in general, and working with other adults that have that leadership story. There's always something that I can take from it. As Christine was saying, like, you get to be a part of someone else's story, but for a kid's book, it's very different, because not only do you get to be a part of someone's story, but you get to bring this whole new person, this character, to life. And it's this added piece. And then you get to give it out to kids who will then put their own sort of little spin on it. And they'll bring a character to life in a way that you also didn't see. And they'll be able to take things from that character. And that's what I wanted Gracie to be. I wanted Gracie to be a role model for all of our little people who, think they can't or didn't know they could. And that's with Brian's help, that's what we've brought Gracie to be. And he's wearing proof of that, which is super exciting.
No,
Gracie is about to become a Matt on the official Bbot emulator on the official Bbot website. Gracie is now going to be an option there. So we're really happy to be partnered with Terrapin and to work with them too.
Awesome. And that just, total shameless plug, but this is why we came together, that the new book is talking just about that, about people coming together, about people working together. I know I wouldn't be as successful, with the launch and things happening without everybody on the screen for different reasons. So I want to thank all of you for that as we kind of wind down. But one of the big things at X Factor, and if you want to check us out, or our team, there's our website. Check out everybody who's doing some great projects. Check out the things that we are really talking about and bringing to you. But the number one thing that was the first words in my book, The Power of Connections, that we brought over with us is be unapologetically you. And as we wrap up, look at the shirts. I like it. It looks great. As we close, I'd love for each of you, and this is totally on the spot, just talk about what you do 1 minute that makes you unapologetically you. For me, this is what I like to wear. I'm always wearing baseball hats. I have my t-shirt on. If you see me in an event, I might even have a sport coat and t-shirt, because it just makes me comfortable. And that was where that all started out with The Power of Connections. I got to meet people as myself, just be loose, have fun, dress that makes me comfortable. And for me, that makes me unapologetically me. So I'm going to throw it over to all of you as we close out. I'd love to hear a little bit, because what makes us strong is that we are our own people. And as Codebreaker is disrupting the status quo, we're doing the same as ourselves. So I'd love to hear from you all. Just not all at once. I'm not going to call on you. Just jump in. I'm not a call-on guy.
It's a room full of teachers. You need to let people know where to go first. Not grabbing the ball.
I'll go.
Thank you, Melissa.
For me, it's doing what I know needs to be done, even when I'm told you shouldn't be doing it.
Nice.
And we do it because it's the right thing to do for the kids that are in your care. That's why.
Awesome. Daphne, you're really going to make me call on people. Okay, Sandra.
I'm going to go. Melissa and I, we didn't even talk about this, but we both wore our shirts today. See, I told you we're soul sisters. I also just feel like for myself, I have always had a lot of energy, and I've had a lot of people who have tried to tell me to tone it down. And I'm like, no, thank you.
No,
You can elevate yourself to my level or get out of my way. But I love to bring my energy into every space that I can. I love to interact with people in a way, hopefully, that makes them feel good. And I like to be able to celebrate the little small miracles that are happening in our school each and every day. I love to celebrate what goes on in our building, and I love to do it with other people. I love to learn from and with other people. And so I'm not apologizing for that. And if that's not okay with you, then I feel bad for you, not for me. And I'm just going to, that's sort of where I feel like I'm unapologetically myself.
Nice.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay.
So I kind of feel like Melissa and Sandra, we get along so well, because I feel like kind of the same. I jump in, I do, and until somebody tells me don't do, and then I'm like, why? And I always question. I just keep going, and sometimes Jennifer and I get a little bit of trouble, but that's okay. we just smile and say it's fine. And I always wear pink and sparkles, and I think that's okay to do that every single time I go into school. I have people look at me like, oh my gosh, here she comes again. I'm like, and so what? So it's just this crazy person walking around the school thinking it's, dressing for prom every day. I don't know, but it's okay to be yourself. And so, yeah, I feel like Melissa and Sandra, we gotta get together.
Oh, yeah, we
100%.
definitely have to. 100%.
PD Ontario wide.
Yeah.
Yay.
All right, there we go. Speaking of pink, Christine, and you're always unapologetically you.
Yeah, so on the same lines as what Melissa had just said, I wear like high heel pumps to work pretty much every day. And it's gotten to a point where when I busted my ankle, people were like, oh, was it from the heels? So like, it's just like, you're just going to get those comments, and I just don't care. It's just a part of how I express myself. I'd say, how I'm unapologetically me is I'm not afraid to be vulnerable. I definitely lead with my heart. And I don't really worry about how people are going to take that. I actually got up and told my story to my own staff last week, which was probably the most terrifying thing I've ever had to do, even though it's a presentation I've given before. It was just a different audience. And, the last thing I told myself is like, this is just who you are. Like, why are you so nervous? It was super well received. It's already created different relationships with the people, and I'm not sorry.
Awesome. So we started and ended with our Codebreaker team. So I'd love to hear from the two of you, because I know from knowing you almost a year now that that's how you live your life.
I'll go first. So everything that was already said is definitely speaks to my soul, to who I am, and I think that's what connected Brian and I. But on a completely different level, I'm a giant nerd, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I love all things computers. I love all things tech, and I cheered on. Brian mentioned last week was Computer Science Education Week, and it's my favorite week of the year, and I have a different outfit for every day. I have no shame, and I love every second of it. And people shrug and they don't get it, and I'm cool with that. You don't need to get it. I do, and I love it all, and that's me.
So bring it home, Brian.
15, 17 years ago, I landed my first permanent gig here in Southern Ontario as an grade 8 teacher. And I was told intermediate teachers, that's what we call our grade 7 and 8s. You might call it middle school. Intermediate teachers, they run a tight ship. And that meant quiet, compliant rows. And it wasn't working for me, and it certainly wasn't working for them. And I had a colleague say, how do you expect your kids to listen and respect you when you dress like them? And that was the day I decided that if I was going to continue in education, I was going to wear my passions on my sleeve. I was going to get as many physical tattoos as possible, because they all tell a story and they're meaningful to me. And I now live on passionate extremes. When I'm happy, everybody knows I'm really fucking happy. And when I'm pissed off, everybody knows I'm really fucking pissed off. And I think that education just needs a little bit of a clean shake moving forward. And so I am completely unapologetic for the swear words I've said during keynotes. I got in trouble from a previous agent over a gig in Texas because they didn't like the word shit, but they needed to hear it. Okay? They needed to hear it because they're stuck. We get stuck in the silo. We get stuck, and no growth comes from being stuck. So I am unapologetically myself. And my first 3 books, very, very careful about teacher jargon and not trying to push too hard. Fear of unions. My first 2 books, I was still attached to a school district. My last book, I did a Control F on the Google Doc. The word fuck exists 72 times, and I'm proud of that.
I edited it. He's not wrong. I took a few out, though. There was more than that before you hit Control F.
And there's one in the forward of my book, so I feel pretty special. And speaking of pretty special, I feel pretty special to be connected to all of you. And yes, I know it's the name of the book, but I do believe in the Stronger Together mindset. And with all of us and our team, we're going to do some great things. We're going to shake the cage. We're going to disrupt status quo, and we are going to make an impact on education. 2022 Codebreaker and X Factor. We're ready to take it on and preview that Christine, Daphne, Brian, myself, we're going to be down at FETC in Orlando. Come check us out. We're going to have some great things, and we're going to kick off 2022 on a high note. So thank all of you for joining this today. I know you're all busy and have things to do, and thank you all the people who've been tuning in and chatting. Look forward to great things to come. We're going to stay stronger together. Thank you, everybody, for joining today.
Brian, you'd be happy to know I dropped my first F-bomb in a keynote the other day in front of my faculty. And on the
nice.
on the ride home, as I was, because I think there's like a disassociation that happens when you're telling your story in front of people, So as I'm riding home and it's like starting to come back to me, I was like, oh shit, I'm pretty sure I said fuck. So I texted so the next day I'm like, can you tell me if this is what happened? And he was like, yep, that's exactly what happened.
That's exactly what happened. I love it.
He said it was perfect.